are no records. So that's $1 million that these nonprofits are out. You know, think about it if all these, because I mean, we have some bigger nonprofits and we have some smaller nonprofits, but what if you had $1 million, Jody, to give to your nonprofits right now? How awesome would that be?
It'd be awesome.
Yeah, so, and again, this is just known embezzlement cases in Boone County, known ones. And this has been committed by board members when they don't have executive directors, so the small mom and pop ones, right? It's been done by executive directors and or employees of these organizations. So it isn't just one, person, one thing, it's everybody. So, and what's sad about it is each one of these was preventable or could have been easily mitigated. That's as a prosecutor, I've been involved pretty much in every single investigation of all those cases except for maybe one or two, where I've worked side by side with the law enforcement agency doing those investigations. And we go into it, and you go, what were you thinking? What was the board thinking? Why didn't you require this? And all this was preventable or could have been caught very early on, where it wouldn't have been as bad as it was. So I kind of wanted to talk about, I reached out to the Community Foundation about a year ago, I think, saying this, if you guys ever do a thing on this, I would love to be a part of it, because I'm frustrated, not only as a prosecutor, I'm frustrated as a member of boards, I'm frustrated as a citizen. This is happening to our nonprofits. What I want to show you, give you examples of where you can be better, all right? You might not be having all these issues, but if you put some of these in place, it will diminish the ability for fraud or theft to happen at your organization. And it's gonna make you a better, stronger organization. So some of the warning signs that we've seen in prosecution of these cases. First and foremost, it's oral presentation of financials, right? So how many of you are on boards and you go and you do the treasurer presents the financials, right? I've been on plenty of boards, and it's one of the smaller boards, right? Where they say, okay, well, this is what we're doing, but they don't have actual documents. They're not showing you the bank statements, things like that. Those have got to be presented. You can, in today's world, when you're doing those Zoom meetings, you need to be presenting those financials. If they're not presenting the financials, if you're not seeing the documents, that's a huge warning sign. The delays in presenting the financials. It was funny, the Western Boone Little League, the guy that was in charge of the financials kept on delaying presentation. Delayed it for 9 months. And no one called him on it. The embezzlement there, he was embezzling for 1 year. So they caught it after 1 year, but it was half of their operating budget. And so that's one of the things where do not allow for the delay of the presentation of your financials. How many times I don't have it prepared. I'm in organizations where that's had, where the treasurer did not have time to get it done. Then you've got to follow up as the executive director, as another board member, hey, send that in an email tomorrow, or put a deadline on it. Don't say, okay, we'll deal with it next quarter. Can't do that. Missing documents or receipts. The biggest thing that I think we've seen is companies or organizations where a person has a credit card and the board is not looking at the Visa bill. How many of you guys have Visa cards, right? Does anyone, who looks at your Visa bill?
Oh, my financial person.
Okay. Because that was not happening before at certain organizations.
Please look at
That's the thing, is that share, if you have a credit card, because the credit card, the credit card bill should be seen by multiple people on your board. One of the things that we do at the CAC is again, we're a small organization, only about $250,000 we operate in a year, maybe if we're lucky.
180, but okay.
We've got some more grants recently. We're getting some more money, right? We just got a $50,000 grant.
Sounds really fancy.
We're getting more money. But, Cassie, once a month, will send to myself and our treasurer, Tony Bales, will send us, here's our Visa bill, and then the receipts are attached to it, and then also on the bill is what it bought. And then before, when we met, we would I would sign the Visa bill, and then I'd make another board member sign the Visa bill saying that every single purchase on the Visa bill was okay. So we've gotta be doing things like that, because that's where places get in trouble, where people aren't looking at the Visa bills. People aren't looking at the checking accounts. All they think is, well, we have an accountant, and the accountant says everything is good. Well, what is the accountant doing normally? What is the accountant, when you have someone come and audit your companies, what are your nonprofits, what are they doing? Are they looking at what the actual expenditures are? Yeah, you're just looking, making sure 1 + 1 = 2. That, they're just looking at, does the money add up? They're not looking at what they're not saying that your actual bills are, what you're paying for is legitimate. And so that's where companies get in trouble, nonprofits get in trouble, is people aren't checking the person that has the credit card, who's writing the checks. Photocopies instead of originals, that can be a big thing back prior to COVID. Nowadays everything's being sent via email, right? But just look at the documents that people are providing and make sure that they're legitimate. Late charges on accounts. I've gotten on Cassie this once or twice. I'm like, what's with this late charge? Well, she explained it and we got it waived. But those are telltale signs that something's wrong if you have late charges on your accounts, if your bills are not being paid on time. Those are things that you've got to make sure aren't happening. And then also you have no independent auditability. You've got to have that. You've got to make sure that you have that ability to do that. There's got to be transparency amongst everything. Because as a board member, I might ask for stuff. As an executive director, don't be ashamed or like, why are you asking for that? I'm doing this to protect you. Just like you are doing things to protect the organization. That we've seen, this is huge, is the person embezzling is overprotective with their work. They won't let anyone else do it. When the Boone County Community Corrections was embezzled from, they took they documented about $55,000 was embezzled from Boone County Community Corrections. The person would never take vacation. So you want to have people that are in charge of money in your organizations, make them take a week off. Have it in your rules. You have to take a week off. Anyone has to deal with money, because that way you can catch things. Because when they're off, and if they say, hey, well, don't take any money while I'm off, I'll do it when I get back. No. You look at their stuff while they're gone. So if you have a lack of an archival system, you've got to have an archive. You've got to have records. I think that's been our problem with some of the nonprofits that have been embezzled from. We have no clue how much money was really taken. As a prosecutor, we have to be able to show what exactly, we have to have evidence. And so what we found is we go into these organizations and we do our criminal audit, and there's nothing there. And we can't tell where the money went. So make sure you, as board members, and then I'm sure you're going to talk about this, is proper accounting procedures and a system set up where you've got the system where you can go back and look at stuff. So you've got to have a good record system to protect yourself, but also so we can go back, and if we have to prosecute it or you have to do any types of checks, you can go back and see what was there.
Also, if you have an insurance policy, and if someone does.
Oh, it does.
You have to make sure, because the insurance policy they said we had even less stolen than the prosecutor's office did. So you've got to make sure you've got all that, if you have an insurance policy for it.
Yeah, because they'll void your insurance policy if you don't have those things in place.
Yeah.
So if you have insurance policies, from theft, and if you have board policies, those board insurance policies, if you don't have the proper procedures and systems set up and or aren't following them, that insurance policy means nothing. You waste all that money. That's a great point, thank you. And then just lack of segregation of duties. This is a huge issue for smaller nonprofits. I mean, again, I'm gonna go back to my experience. Our experience at the CAC is we have one person that kind of does everything for us. And so we have to have a lot of oversight of her to protect her. She kind of does everything. And so, unfortunately, most of these organizations, you can't really have a lot of segregation of duties. But if you can, set it up that way. And if you can't have segregation of duties, make sure you have plenty of oversight. And the first thing I did when I came into the CAC is I changed a few things around. And I told Cassie, it wasn't because I don't trust you, but I want to protect you. I want to protect the executive director, I want to protect the organization. And that's what you have to do, because, you know, we've got a lot of I think you call them mom and pop, you know, kind of organizations that people consider nonprofit, but might not be true 501c3s, right? So we got a ton of those in Boone County, and so we've got to set, and they might not have executive directors, but a lot of times one person runs the ship, you know. So that's what happens at places like, you know, Lebanon Youth Football, when they were being, like, one person was running the ship, they did everything. When you're on those types of boards, don't let that happen when one person's doing everything. You know, board engagement is huge, right? We've got, you know, so if you don't have an executive director and you're on boards, get the board engaged and have different responsibilities. Get the board engaged in your organization and make sure that the board is setting the tone for your organization. You know, I think the word engagement's a better word, because you don't want a board running the organization, but you want to have a board that's engaged. The boards can be engaged, members of the boards can be engaged different ways. You know, I try not, you know, I'm an attorney, I'm a prosecutor, we kind of like to do everything our own way, right? I mean, that's just the way we are. And so, right, Cassie?
Yes.
So, I mean, I personally struggle with that, where, you know, where I have to let go, but I think my engagement's better than it was than my predecessor. You know, and so you've got to find that, you've got to find what works for your organization, but engagement, and it's not just the president of the board. Get other people on the board engaged in the organization. And how engagement looks is different for every organization. But having an engaged board is critical to the culture of your organization, and having them understand the importance of having these protections. Fraud education. Make sure, whether you're the executive director or you're the board member, make sure that everyone understands the importance of education and do the education internally. I mean, Katie, how hard has it been for the Boys and Girls Club since this has happened? What happened with the Lebanon Boys and Girls Club? I know you guys developed them, but a year later maybe.
Yeah, but within the year.
Within the year. But it impacted.
Oh, it still does.
Yeah. And so having that education will help prevent that in the future. And I mean, just like, you know, the Humane Society, a long time ago, you know, I think it was a volunteer maybe embezzled, you know, and always the people don't want to report, they don't want to report it because they don't want to have the impact. You've got to report these things. I know that on at least 3 of the cases that we've prosecuted or are currently prosecuting, the person did it before, but it was never reported. So it's happened before and they don't want to report it. You've got to report it to protect each other. That's the main thing. So if it happens at your organization, please report it. Let the police, the prosecutor do their job. I know you're not always going to like the end result of your job or how long it takes to get to the end result, right, Katie? Don't be afraid to ask questions if you're on a board, or even for executive directors, ask questions. That's how you get involved and get engaged. Ask those questions. You know, and also promote the culture within your board and your organization of asking questions. Don't be afraid of any question. Don't be afraid of the answers either. Again, corporate culture I think is huge, within this segment, and I think for nonprofits to have that transparency is the most important thing. It'll help amongst your board members. Let's be honest, we live in a small community. You know, I don't care if it's Zionsville, Whitestown, or Thorntown, or Lebanon. It's a small community and stuff gets out, right? And I mean, we all hear stuff. Create a culture of transparency within your organizations. Then no one will question your money, and it'll be easier for you to fundraise. Again, audit, review your financial records. Those of you that are lucky enough to have a CPA come in and do your annual audits, great. You need to have that. And then also, please establish procedures for everything. But not only establish them, follow them. You know, it's one thing to say you have procedures, but it's another thing to actually follow them. And as executive directors, if your board members aren't following them, make them do that. You know, push your board. It's okay to push your board. I get pushed all the time. You know, but then as board members, make your executive directors follow the rules and procedures, right? And some of you might be friends with them, but say no to them. It's okay to say no. If you can't say as board, if you can't say no to your executive director, you've got an issue, right? So you've got to be able to have that type of relationship, that culture, that responsibility and respect of each other, where the board can say no, but also the executive director can push the board, and say, hey, we need to do this. So, those are just some of the prevention things that I've seen. Again, it goes all down to, I think, to the culture that you promote within that board, and the board being engaged, and each of you holding each other accountable. It just isn't happening. Is that the board is not holding the executive directors accountable sometimes, or other board members accountable, and vice versa. Those are things that I think we all need to do. So I want to thank you for your time. I know it's really quick, but it's a lot of easy things. Honestly, it's very easy. The way to prevent fraud in all these organizations is very easy. It goes back to transparency, sharing information, division of responsibilities, and being engaged as board members. Making sure, so if you're an executive director and if you've got an unengaged board, get them engaged. And board members, if you're the president or vice president, get other board members engaged. I know it's hard, trust me, I understand how hard it is to get board members engaged. And that's something that we all struggle with. But it's something we've got to improve on, so we don't have another $1 million, go out the door. So, Jody, I think you're up next.
What are their responsibilities? If you're sitting in here on a board today, you're like, okay, this is great, but what do I need to do? The board members, like it or not, you guys are the trustees of the organization's assets, and you are the stewards of the public trust. And keep that in mind one more time. As Kent said, Boone County's small, so when you're on a board of directors here in Boone County, the public is trusting you to be the good stewards of that financial information and those assets, no matter what board you're sitting on. They need to be objective, honest, and efficient. So be careful when you're choosing board members, because those are critical qualities that we want to look for. Your board of directors, and if you're sitting here on a board and you're like, I don't want to, I'm sorry, but you have to know, does 1 + 1 = 2 or 3? You've got to, does it pass the smell test, as Bob likes to say, right? You have to understand financial basics as a board member. I'm gonna do a quiz here, okay? How many people here know what a balance sheet is? Be honest. Okay, this is good. Profit and loss statement. Statement of cash flows. A little bit less, okay. So that's kind of what I expected. All right, so here we go. So balance sheet, right? Do you run your own personal house on your balance sheet every day? Okay, do you sit around at your house and say, well, my house is worth this and my cars are worth this, and then I owe this much on my mortgage, and then, well, that all equals, and I've got equity in my home. Is that how you run your house every day? No. You run your house on cash in, cash out, right? I'm not saying that's a bad thing to look at your net worth, but think about your own self. So now think about your company that you are either an executive director of or a board member of, okay? On a daily basis, are you sitting around looking at how much cash is in the bank, okay? And then who do we owe? And those are all great things, but at the end of the day, you should be looking at your statement of cash flows. And hear me out on that. If you don't know what it is, call me or get educated on it as a board member or executive director. And if you are not looking at your statement of cash flows on a regular basis, you should be, because that's your cash in and your cash out. Again, take it back to your house right now. If you were at home and you were saying, okay, here's my paycheck, did I get my paycheck? Here's all my expenses I had to pay out. What was my cash at the beginning of the month? What's my cash at the end of the month? If you're not looking at that at your nonprofit, shame on you, okay? Oh, sorry, I'm yelling. It's so imperative, though, that you be looking at where the cash was at the beginning of the month. All the cash that came in, we're all nonprofits, right? We're bringing in donations. Now we've got expenses to pay out, right? We're paying our people. What was my cash at the end? And you should be anticipating as a board member or an executive director is, what should the picture look like? Oh, that's right, we got a grant in this month, so cash went up, okay? Oh yeah, we paid out a bunch of scholarships this month, cash should be going down. You should always have that litmus test going on in your mind, where should we be? And it takes time. We don't all have degrees in accounting, and that's okay, but you've gotta have, if you just, everybody here has a checkbook or a bank account. If you just think of it like that, it's not that hard. The last thing we want to talk about is budgeting and legal ramifications. Okay, again, as a board member, you should be approving the budget, and you should be looking at that every month, comparing it back to actuals. Be, like Kent said, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Why is this higher? Why is this lower? Why didn't we bring in this money? What happened? Okay? And then again, as a board member, you have to oversee all the legal obligations. What are your filing requirements? Do you file a 990? When is it due? Okay? Again, payroll. Who's in charge of payroll? How many different people have access to the payroll records? If it's just one, you might want to relook at that, because it should be at least two, if possible. And if it's not, if you're just a single person here and you're a nonprofit and you're tiny, make sure that you and a board member both have access. And then again, you should also be looking at your executive compensation. How much are your executives making? That's part of you as a board member to be looking at that, okay? All right, I'm almost done yelling at you. All right, let's talk about the differences then between if I'm a staff member, because a lot of us do wear multiple hats, right? I'm a staff member at the Community Foundation, but I serve on the board of directors of a couple of nonprofits here in Boone County. So sometimes we have to understand what are the differences between a staff member and a board member, and also our finance committee, if you're lucky enough to have one, okay? So I tried to make you a chart here that you could take home with you. If you can't read it on your tiny little ones, JR's gonna send this out afterwards, so you'll have it kind of in a bigger, like, this is really nice, I'm gonna have fun with it, okay? And if you can't, I don't think you can read it from there, or on your small one. We'll see how small this is. But I tried to make you a chart here so that you could see, yeah, you can kind of read it. Who's responsible for what when it comes to budgets, financial statements, and then the internal controls? And I won't read all these to you right now, but I want you to see, what I wanted you to gather from this is, what is the staff responsible for? What should our board be doing, and what should our finance committee be doing? And if you're too small to have a finance committee, at least try to have your board members, a couple of people on your board that have that financial expertise that they can help you with. It's a combination, and it's a partnership between both. The other thing is, I've made another chart here for you to take home as it relates to like audits and investments and communication. And again, we go through here, like during your audit, what should the staff be doing, okay? Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that you have hope that there's resources out there. We have lots of resources here in Boone County. We can point you in the right direction. If you're a board member, please brush up on your financial statements. Please do that for your own self. They produce them, they probably give them to you at every board meeting every month. Don't gloss over it, just go, okay, whatever, it's the same as last month. Actually look at it and question it, you know? Katie.
Question for you, in this digital age, we're still, we like paper, of course, in House Club.
Yep.
So, and, you know, all the checks and balances, it has to have 2 board members' signatures, but, you know, your visa bill comes and you have 10 days to pay it, and your board's out of town, and how do you recommend doing electronic bill paying to keep the checks and balances in check?
Okay, I'll give you an example of what we did. I don't know if some of you know, we're just a small staff of 5. But we're lucky to have a wonderful 15-member board, so that's amazing for us. I'll tell you what we did would be kind of and you guys are about a staff of 5 also-ish?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, the Visa bill is a great example. So we want to auto pay that first, okay? I would highly recommend setting that up on auto pay. So it just automatically sweeps out of the account and goes straight to your Visa folks so that they're paid. You don't want your employees running around with maybe if they have a corporate credit card and not being able to buy office supplies, okay?
Or food during the emergency food program.
Well, right, okay, or food. So now it's gotten paid, but we've got a check and balance in there of, for example, I have to review the entire bill before it can get sent off to the bank and be processed into our account. To sign that check just to get the Visa bill paid, I don't really think that that's practical. I would set that up on auto pay and then have all the expenses scrutinized by somebody on your staff, either yourself or Mark, and be able and have to sign off on those before anything's booked into the accounting system. Kent, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree, it's the same thing, pay the bill first,
Yes.
but then, you know, depending on how you set it up, so we do that, Cassie pays the bill, then, our accountant
Your
pays the
accountant pays the
bill.
bill.
Yeah.
Our accountant pays the bill, but she sends me the bill, and on the bill, and it sends to me and Tony, and on the bill, she writes on the bill what it was for, like, you know, and then it's color coded, we've got a color code what it's for,
Yes.
and then all the receipts are attached as well.
Right.
So-
Same, that's exactly what we do, and then also we take it a step further, just like Kent said in his speech, we then produce those bills at the board of directors.
We do that quarterly, then we
Yeah.
make those available quarterly at our board of directors meetings, because Tony and I will sign off on it that month, and then we have a quarterly meeting, I don't know how we meet.
Every other month.
Yeah, quarterly, and then at our quarterly meeting, I make it available for every board member to see. Before, we used to make at least 2 board members sign it, but we're not meeting together right now, so.
I was gonna ask that quick question. Okay, so how many here are, they're staff members like me, like you're a staff member? Okay, and then all the rest of you are on the board. Okay, because then let me ask you this, those of you that are staff members, don't laugh at me, do you have a board of directors? Everybody does, everybody has a board, okay, and then how often are your boards meeting, just out of curiosity?
We do quarterly.
Quarterly, 6 times a year, so every other month?
Every other month.
Every other month,
Or monthly.
monthly. Okay, so that's good, so then your board has that opportunity. Are you able, those of you that are here, are you able to have financial statements at those board meetings?
Our treasurer sends ours out monthly, by
Monthly,
about the 7th or 8th of every month.
got it? So everybody's seeing them monthly. That's here-ish? No, you're not seeing yours monthly, cause you guys are quarterly?
Yeah, and our grants are state and federal, so they reimburse quarterly, so
Okay.
when it dumps all in at one time, so that's.
And
why
then,
we've
can
got
I
it.
ask, who's doing your financial statements? You have somebody?
Lyndon Connell.
Okay, Lyndon Connell.
Yeah.
No, they're phenomenal. We used them at
Yeah.
Habitat. They do a great, I was gonna recommend them. I have no tie to them, but we used them at Habitat. They did a great job. Okay, so they're producing those for you.
Yes.
So then you have a constant, you're able to see,
Yes.
you know, on a regular basis, where you are with your cash.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you're happy. Okay, good. Anybody, okay, so does anybody have any questions about any of that? Okay, thank you for the question about the visa bill. Again, I totally agree with get them